I was very fascinated with why there were no women field engineers. And also one of my friends just became one, and I was like, I want to go too. And they were like, no, women don't go. And I think something in my head turned and I was like, why? Yeah, and I think as a young 20-year-old, I was like, no, I want to do it. I think I fought and I became Mahindra and Mahindra's first woman after sales engineer. I had a tumor that kind of grew and became quite serious, and something needed to be done, so life stopped. It got removed. I still live with facial paralysis. It's 10 years later, so it's much better. I mean, HEC was a blast. It was a really exciting 18-20 months in my life, and I had started my first company. I was in Paris where fashion was everywhere. It was too expensive. Rent the Runway was blowing up in the US at that point. So I just kind of put it all together and I said, listen, can I buy stuff in Europe and get it to India, and can I kind of create a rental service for India? It was Rent the Runway for India. It was called StyleBank. Building one brand in India is very difficult. It's like a long journey. It's going to take a lot of money. So we just decided to put everything under 10 Club Homes. And yeah, we're now one single brand, 10clubhomes.com.
Thanks, Bhavna, for joining us today. I know that we've been in touch for a very long time, but finally good to have you in-house. And our series is all about women who have wiped out the norm. Clearly, your story is one such, where you have taken many unconventional twists and turns in your life, and now you're building 10 Club, representing your brand color also today.
Everything in my life is here.
Yeah. So very glad to have you, and I would like to start by asking you about your childhood journey, because more than the technicals, I really want to know the person behind you, what values did you learn in your childhood that you still have today, and how did people in your life influence you from childhood till now?
First, thanks for having me. Second, thanks for chasing me for a really long time. It's just very busy building, and I was just I'm not ready to talk yet, but now I am. So thanks for having me. The questions about my childhood? Man, there's so much about my childhood. What do I say? I think I grew up in the Middle East.
Okay. Your parents were working there?
Yeah, they were both working there. And my dad was there till about 3 years ago. So, he spent most of his life there, but I spent a large part of my childhood there from the time I can remember. So it's like India, but extremely protected. So I think, I want to say I grew up in an extremely protected environment. By protected, I mean everything, right? You're in an AC car going somewhere, you're getting out in a protected environment. It's too hot to do anything else. But I went to an Indian school, so it was as good as growing up in very protected India.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a simple childhood. I'm an only child, so it's not that I have siblings or anything. But I've said this many times, and I think I was a single child to very young parents. And I think that was where life became very interesting, because most young parents, when you have single children, you get very protective. But mine were just, I don't know, they treated me like an adult since I was very young. So I thought that's how the world worked. Where I think from a really young age, I found it really important to voice my opinion.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how I grew up. So I think if I had to kind of summarize my childhood and my learning from my childhood is, from a really young age, I was asked what I wanted, and it became very clear to me what I wanted. So when I don't know what I want, I get a little confused and I get a little worried. But when I know what I want, I make it very clear everybody in the room knows what I want. Traveling the world obviously became the most exciting thing. And rather than saying, hey, I will earn well enough to travel and on my own terms, I wanted to get onto the Merchant Navy. That's how I kind of ended up doing my mechanical engineering, because my sound father, rather than saying, no, you cannot, you're being ridiculous, he was like, why don't you go do your engineering at the end of it if you want to, for sure. So at the end of engineering, obviously, I was like, no chance in hell.
Huh.
There is no way I'm getting on a boat and getting stuck. So yeah.
How did you have that realization?
After spending 4 years with 300 boys, I think I was like, I'm done.
How many girls were you in your batch?
3.
Out of 300?
Yeah.
Which institute was this?
I was in Karnataka in Bangalore. This college called MSRIT, Ramaya. It's a very boisterous mechanical engineering school, and I think 4 years of engineering cemented life for me in a way where I think after that experience, nothing can make me more uncomfortable. And I had so much fun by the end of it that, I think when something's uncomfortable, I have a lot of joy saying, okay, I'm going to figure this out and make it fun. After that, I got recruited. I didn't know what I wanted to do. The usual suspects came to college, all of the recruitment. I went and sat in a recruitment firm because they were making you play football as part of the recruitment process, and I just thought it was fun. So I played football, and it ended up being Mahindra and Mahindra that was recruiting. Yeah, so my first job was at like the most male company that could come to college.
There also you were like one of the few women only.
So I think the way Mahindra and any of these corporates hire is they usually hire in truckloads, right? Like not from our college, but in general, every year they hire 200, 300 young graduates from around the country. You get put into one like training institute together. So it's almost like easing you out of college. So there were 2-3 months where all of us from around the country kind of came and trained together as trainees. And then after that, they kind of split you and put you in different spaces. Obviously, I didn't make it to R&D, and nor did I make it to design, nor did I make it to production. I made it to sales and marketing, of course.
Do you remember one of the most interesting questions that you were asked in the interview process?
I was made to play football. I thought that was the most, I think I still till today think it was one of the most interesting interviews because it was so cool. It was a room and everyone was writing papers and people were in formals answering questions. And I remember the recruiter too, he's a friend now. He came and he was a young guy. He said, this is so boring. Shall we go outside, all of us? And it was a bunch of boys and me. And he was like, I want to see how y'all play and what your dynamics are. So can we play a round of football? And it started raining and all of us were playing football in the rain. It was really cool. I thought it was a very interesting process. Of course, we had a written interview and we had all of the questions. But I think that set such an interesting ground. Work did not turn out to be anything like that. So I was in my head, I was like, wow, if the recruitment process is so fun, how fun is work going to be? And I think on day one, I was in shock.
What were you asked to do on day one?
No, the first 45 days was always training, right? So it's exactly like you train in your school with different subjects and different programs. They kind of put you in here and they teach you a little bit of everything that the company does. And depending on what you're good at and what you get allocated, right? So that's how you get the engineers and the R&D people go into R&D and the design people go down and the production people go down. Day one, I got slotted into sales and marketing. They were like, this one can talk. Just please send her there. But I think the answer for me there was at the end of 45 days. And you get trained on the factory, on the ground. You get to test. You get to drive. You get to do everything, right? For me, I think I fought and I was very fascinated with why there were no women field engineers. And also one of my friends just became one and I was like, I want to go too. And they were like, no, women don't go. And I think something in my head turned and I was like, why? And I think as a young 20-year-old, I was like, no, I want to do it. And I think I fought and I became Mahindra and Mahindra's first woman after sales engineer. Which is basically my job was to go into new areas and run service stations. So not sales in the showroom, but service stations. So I was behind with the mechanics. So where your car comes to get serviced, I used to run those for Mahindra in some regions, right? And obviously women were not allowed, but usually never opted to do something like that because it's generally the dirty job. And it's usually customers not coming happy to buy, but customers coming complaining about something broken. So it was not the fun part of the job. It was complaining customers, angry customers, all of that. So I think it was an incredible... So I chose Goa. I lived in Goa and I set up service stations in Goa.
Oh.
And it's Mahindra and Mahindra. So these are not even passenger cars. These are like heavy SUVs and commercial vehicles. So it was very uncomfortable. But I had so much fun by the end of it.
And then when did you decide to leave Mahindra and then pursue your MBA?
Oh, no, Mahindra, 1.5 years, 2 years, somewhere between that, 1.5 and 2 years. It's a little vague because I don't fully know when I actually left.
Okay.
There was a handover period, there was all of that.
Why did you leave though?
Why did I leave? I'd done it for 1.5 years. It was fun. It was all of that. And then I think I came to Bangalore for the summer and I ended up meeting a very young, cool founder. A friend of mine was working with them and he kind of introduced me and he said, I think you should just have a chat. I feel like you'll have a great time. And yeah, I met Vineet and Deepak. They were starting 2009, 2010. They had just set out to kind of work with digital. They were the digital agency, one of the first few digital agencies in India, and they were working with some of the coolest brands I'd heard of, and digital was just starting. So I think I walked into that office, I saw the team, there were 10, 12 people, very few, all young. It was such exciting work that my brain was just like, this is more fun, I'm going to come here.
Okay.
So I think it was a very quick decision in my head, saying I did that was great, but this seems cooler and it seems so new.
Yeah.
So it was just a very quick decision of try. And it was like tasting blood, right? Like, it was our version of it was a startup. It was the same energy, the same confusion, the same breakage, the same stress, but very good friends and everybody at the same wavelength and doing some really cool work with agencies and brands. So I had a great time, like 1.5 years, 2 years there. And in that journey, I saw they got acquired. We got acquired. And it was so interesting for me to watch up close because I've never seen anything like it. And I saw the high of like building something, building it from zero, getting acquired by DDB Group, which was one of the biggest media firms in the world. And, I think it was just...
How is that agency doing different work? How are y'all like different from the other well-known established agencies?
Because I think 22 Feet was... it was a pure digital agency. It was not an advertising firm with creative, but it was pure digital. So back in the day, you're talking about websites and microsites and campaigns and content strategy and stuff, which nobody was doing it.
Okay.
So, it was...
Which year was this?
2012.
Okay, yeah. Very nascent.
Mahindra was in 2010 and this was 2012.
Okay. Long time, huh?
Yeah, I'm old, yeah.
Yeah, but your memory is very strong.
What do you mean? It's my life. How do you not remember your life?
No, I mean, some people forget instances.
I'm not that old.
You exactly remember so many details of it.
Yeah. So, it was great. I did that and then made some money in the process.
You had stock options of the company?
We were very young. Yeah. That's why I said it was proper like startup, right? So, like, just saw all of it, watched it happen. And then I think it was just one of those periods, like something happened. I fell medically ill, like I was really unwell. And this was when I was 24, 25.
Okay.
I had a tumor.
What kind of tumor was it?
It's on my face. It's my facial. So I had a tumor that kind of grew and became quite serious.
How did you know about it?
It was a very painful, large tumor that was interfering with my full life. So everybody in my life knew it was there. And it was a tumor, and something needed to be done. So life stopped. Like Jan 2013, life stopped. I got it operated. I think it was one of those turning points in my life where I watched everybody in my life just melt and crack and break down. And I think everybody was like, oh my God, our 25-year-old young girl, like, obviously, right, who will get married to her, what will happen to her life, everything. And it was on my face. So, but yeah, Jan 3rd, 2013, I'll never forget. I don't know. I think it was just one of those again, I remember in December, just before the thing, my mom and dad were traveling because I don't remember where, but I have a feeling it was a temple. It had to be. They were praying, I'm sure. I remember I went and met a doctor on my own. I went and kind of scheduled my date on my own. And I said, if no one's going to sign this off, I'm now 18 and above, I can sign. Get it out of me. And yeah, we blocked the date for 3rd of Jan. Everybody came. I think my parents were terrified. I've never seen them more terrified. Yeah, it got removed. I still live with facial paralysis. It's 10 years later, so it's much better. But half my face was paralyzed for really, I mean, it continues to be, but it was much worse then. But yeah, I think something in my head turned that day. I was just like, man, I survived this. I'm alive. And like, there was so much drama and crying and freaking out. And yeah, something changed, but there's now life ahead.
What stage did you figure it out at?
So I always had it, but it was in me for like 2.5, 3 years, and it had started to get very serious.
Oh my
because
God.
It was my facial nerve. Nobody could do anything. It grew on my facial nerve.
You always had it, meaning?
No, I got it when I think it was detected when I was 21, 22.
Okay.
Very, very small. And it was not dangerous. It was something that people brushed away, right? It was...
Oh. You didn't show it to the doctor at that time?
I did. I think there was 1 year of active, doctors in my life. And that's when I think something in my head just turned. But then it started getting cancerous, right? Like it started getting serious.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was just one of those things where you just have to stand and say, whatever has to happen will happen. Just do it. So yeah, see, it's a nice story to tell right now.
But it's such a painful process to go through, and it requires so much of resilience and strength to overcome those days.
I was too young. Nothing was being processed. I don't think I was seriously contemplating the consequences or anything. And I think it's an interesting place to be in life where some things you don't have a choice. You have to do it. What is the point of overthinking it? Like, you will just freak yourself out. So that's what I'm saying. I met this doctor. He was fantastic. He was very, very senior and very old. And I remember it was a very long surgery.
How long did you take it?
I think it was 11 or 12-hour surgery. I don't
Really?
remember. It was my facial nerve. It was big.
Oh my God.
I was in the hospital for weeks together. Therapy was 6 months. But, it's all a process. But I think when life kind of goes on, you remember the funny things. I will never forget, and my dad and I laugh about it even now, is the surgery got over. And I think a few hours when I could wake up, of course, everybody came. And it's kind of sweet, right? And you're in the hospital and suddenly everybody's fussing over you and everybody from everywhere is coming to meet you. And I remember my boys from engineering came and they were the idiots. Like, I had tubes all over me. And they've come into the room and they were making fun of my face. They were like, your face. And that's what friends are for, right? Like, nobody came and cried and was sad, but they ended up coming and they were just making fun of me like everything was normal. And I think those are the memories I have, which is... Day 2, I could not eat the hospital food anymore. I was losing it. Where my dad actually sneaked me out of the room. And we went to the canteen and we ate chicken. So, those are the memories I have.
Yeah.
So for me, it's... Yeah.
Coming back to your life story at HEC, tell me how your experience there was. What were some of the most memorable experiences that you had?
I mean, HEC was a blast. I think the average age at school was about 32, 33.
Is it?
Yeah, it's not... European schools are not young.
Okay.
They're, I think... And I actually, in hindsight, think it's extremely important to go to business school when you're a little older. Because when you're younger, there's nothing. What experience do you have? What are you going to talk about?
Right.
Like, I was completely useless in my class. Like, a lot of times, like, I partied. Like, my whole business school, of course, I started my first business a month into school because I was bored. Like, I had so much time.
Yeah.
And people don't say that about business schools, but I think I went to Europe and it's not as fast paced as the rest of the world. So I had paid internships because I wanted to make money. So I think I was in school. It was not really about the classes, which I regret. And I think anybody I meet today, I say, please go to school like when you're a little older, because I would die to be back in those classes right now, because those case studies would make sense to me today.
Right.
They really did not make sense to me when I was 25. Like, it really did not make sense to me. But I really, truly appreciate it today. So if I could turn back in time, I would go back and sit in more classes. Business school was just like a big party. And there was so much travel. And so it was really exciting. It was a really exciting 18, 20 months in my life. And I had started my first company in school.
While studying?
1 month into school, yeah.
Tell me about
So my
that.
entire business school, I was also running my first company.
While you were also partying?
I was doing everything. I don't know where time came from. Like, that's what I'm saying, right? I don't know where I produced hours from. I wish I could now. So it was internships, business, class, partying, travel. I don't know how 24 hours.
Wow.
It was so much fun.
What business were you running at?
So I think I went to Paris a month into class. Like, everyone was, because I was definitely one of the younger people in class. And I think some of the older ones, they were so clear, right? They were on a career path. So they knew exactly what they wanted to do, which is they were very clear whether they wanted to get into impact or... The great thing about HEC was it's a very small class. It's only 120 people and from everywhere around the world.
Yeah.
So, and a little older.
Yeah.
So it was really diverse. It was really interesting. And all of us lived together in the same building for a really long time. So everybody got very close. So for me, it was just exposure at a very different level, right? Because the way people think, the way people behave, and because it's Europe, it's a little bit more, inclusive, and it was really nice. But I think in the middle of all of this, I was very clear I'm not a consultant, I'm not a banker.
Yeah.
And I, for the first time, had no idea. Like, I was like, what do I do? And I think in one of those classes, maybe because Varun was with Uber and the shared economy was kind of playing in really big, and I was very fascinated watching his journey with Uber. And he was one of the first employees in Asia. So he was in the launch phase where he was having so much fun. So I think part of that was in my brain.
Yeah.
I was in Paris where fashion was everywhere. It was too expensive. Rent the Runway was blowing up in the US at that point. So I just kind of put it all together and I said, listen, can I buy stuff in Europe and get it to India? And can I kind of create a rental service for India? I mean, I was obsessed with the idea. I was obsessed with...
Was it like drop shipping types?
It was proper buy inventory, set up shop, rent it to like young girls in India.
Okay.
It was Rent the Runway for India. It was called StyleBank. I just got 1 month in, I was obsessed with the idea. Like every class, that's all I spoke about. I was building business models only for it. I only kept talking about it till my professor sat me down and he was like, you have to do this, right? Because you're obsessed with it. So HEC kind of, that's the great thing about doing something like this in business school, right? Like the incubation team kind of found me, made me build it out. I found investors, very early investors. I found a business partner back home. Okay. She was my colleague from 22 Feet. So it was really exciting. Did all of that and it was such a high, and finished school and came back immediately to run it in India, and we'd scaled a little bit, bombed really badly. India was not ready to rent Western clothing at all. They wanted Indian clothing.
Okay, so why didn't you pivot?
I don't think I was excited about building Indian clothing, and I don't think anyone's been able to do it. It's very difficult.
Okay.
It's not easy. You need to take an Indian Indian garment and rent it out 20 times to break even. And if somebody wore an Indian garment with heavy embroidery 20 times, you're ruining the garment.
Yeah.
It's not possible. You can do it with Western clothing, you can't do it with
Correct.
Indian clothing. And that was my first lesson in unit economics.
What's the business model around this? How
You have a bank of clothing,
Huh.
right? Like you have clothing, accessories, shoes, bags.
Yeah.
And women don't need to buy, right? Like fast fashion is extremely unsustainable to buy and keep. And everybody wants different clothing.
Correct.
And especially in today's day and age, nobody wants to repeat clothes.
Huh.
So it was almost like a bank where it's usually a subscription service
Yeah.
or like a one-time where if you rent a piece of garment, you pay 1/10 the cost. So if you buy it for 1,000 rupees, you can rent it for 100 rupees.
Okay.
You use it, 48 hours later, you have to return it.
Huh.
So that garment has to be rotated 10 times
Huh.
for you to break even at the cost of the garment.
Okay.
But this is, so that's from our side, but from a user point of view, it's still a very interesting concept.
Yeah.
You know, very hard to execute, which is,
Like, what were the pain points apart from the ones you mentioned?
I think the back end of this is logistics.
Huh.
Two, you're expecting the user to handle the garment with care. 3, sizing is always going to be a problem.
Yeah.
4, it's almost like running the largest laundry. It is laundry. At the end of the day, it is about, can you dry clean and do laundry at scale and do it well? The cost for India was not adding up at all. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
no
the
one-
laundry cost is to the company. I mean, nobody's paying for it.
So we built it all in, but I think that's the idea, right? Like, it was just, we got tie-ups, we got partnerships.
Yeah.
We were doing it at a really cheap cost, but it was still not working out.
Like, how many customers did you still have in India?
We only did Bangalore, so we did outside. We started with all cities. We started with 10 cities. We realized it was extremely unsustainable across cities. Then we did Bangalore. I think there was a point where we scaled to about 5,000 customers in Bangalore that actually would use regularly and kind of, but it was just not adding up. Like, at that point, I had to raise like a few million, and it was ridiculous. Like, when I think about it now, the VCs that I went and sat to, and some of them know me today, right? Like, they remember me from 14.
Yeah.
And like, I think Kaval from Fireside,
Huh.
I actually very recently had lunch with him, and I showed him one very, very cute, immature message I had sent him on LinkedIn back in 2014 saying, this is what I'm going to build, and you should bank me. And he was very nice even back then. He said, sure, kind of talk to me, and here's my team. But I was like, who would have thought like a decade later you would be on my cap table the way you are?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh, did you actually speak to him back then for pitching?
I spoke to a bunch of people.
Oh.
Yeah, so I did my early rounds, and
Wow.
to the same folk that I see now, that I'm just like, okay,
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And then how did you, when you shut down your business, how did you return the capital back? Which
So
you had taken?
we had only 2 angels, like 2 serious angels. We gave back money, right? We had very little, like less than 1 crore or something in the bank. Which was still a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
We gave it back. I think, it was earth-shattering, right? Like, suddenly for me, suddenly I've gone, I've done all of this, I've said I'm going to change the world, and I've come back, and it's ground zero. You're like, oh my God, I have failed.
How did you decide that it's time to now roll it up?
It was just not working. We could not see traction. It's going to cost money. I think I was sitting in these rooms with all of the VCs, and I was hearing the feedback, and I think it's very important to hear feedback, right?
Yeah.
Like, there were enough people saying that this is not going to work. How is this going to work? And I think Sequoia had backed one of the players with $2 or $3 million, and they had scaled at that point. And I think early signs of them not doing well also had started to come. So in general, after a year of running it, all of us were like, this is not working. It's very difficult. And I think it became that point where the pivot was to move from Western to Indian. And I think both of us were very clear we didn't. My heart was just not in it. I could not pivot. Or I didn't want to do Indian clothing, and I didn't believe it was possible. So I think that was the time to call it. So we called it, and I told myself never again. that this entrepreneurship is too difficult. I can't do it.
So you never wanted to become an entrepreneur again?
Of course, I think everyone who fails the first time will say, I would never again. I don't know anybody who will say, I will do it again. I think your heart is broken into a million pieces. Confidence is gone. You're like, it's very hard to give up something the first time.
Yeah.
Right? And then you grow up a little bit and you're like, you need to let go to be able to move on. I think that takes time to realize. But yeah, I think then I was like, never again. And I got this random, again, really like universal random email in my inbox.
From?
From a private equity firm that said, listen, I've said this story a few times, which is when you go to business school in Europe, and I was kind of plugged into the startup ecosystem because I was working with a venture, plus I was trying to build my own thing.
Yeah.
So I was meeting a bunch of people in the ecosystem. So they kind of knew who I was. Somebody had my CV somewhere. So they would kind of message me often enough to say, hey, are you still building? Are you free? Are you available? Because I think everybody knew this was not going to work.
Okay.
So one of those days I got an email saying, listen, a private equity firm bought a venture, a distressed venture, and they're looking for somebody to come take over and run it. It's in the Philippines.
What industry was it?
Real estate.
How did...
No logic.
Yeah.
There's no logic. There's no logic, and I think that's the thing about entrepreneurs, right? Like, I was so young. Like,
How young were you that time?
I think 27.
You got this opportunity of a CEO at 27?
Yeah. I mean, he was not a CEO of like a big company, right? It was a distressed firm. Like, nobody in their right mind would have taken that job, right?
It's already distressed, giving you so much stress that how are you?
Yeah, there was like you can't. It's a distressed buyout, which basically means a majority of that company is owned by a private equity firm, and they just need somebody to come run it. And it's not in a major like developed country. It is in the Philippines. Philippines and Indonesia, and they basically said, listen, we have a couple of $1 million that we're willing to put in. Would you want to come try giving this a shot? And I had that as an option, and the alternate option in my inbox that I will never forget this because I took a holiday to decide what I wanted to do.
Okay.
Actually, my interview for this was in Indonesia, so I went and I got this job, and they kind of said, can you start next week?
Well, which was the other option you had?
So, and in parallel, I had spent some time interviewing for a VC in Bangalore.
VC fund?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had gotten an offer to become an associate with them.
An associate and a CEO. These were the two options.
But associated at a very reputed VC firm.
You can't take the name.
I won't.
Okay.
I'm trying to be diplomatic here and I won't take it. So a really reputed VC firm, a partner that I really looked up to.
Okay.
I think I've pitched to them a few times and they were like, I'm not going to fund your company, but why don't you come join? And, you can... So I think my path was very clear. I was like, oh, this is exciting. I can do this. And But then obviously I ended up picking the stupid,
Why? How did you choose that on your holiday?
So yeah, I remember getting both jobs, and I remember I took a holiday alone because I was in Indonesia after the job interview and I had both the offers, and I was like, this makes sense. I can be in the same country as Varun. I can work for a reputed VC firm. I can live a normal life and I can do it. Or there's an option to kind of take a flight, move to the Philippines, never lived in that country before. It's in real estate. It's a distressed firm. Everybody is in a confused state. What would I do? And yeah, I remember picking up the phone and telling Varun that I'm going to take a few days. And I went to Gili because I was in Jakarta. I took a flight to Gili and I spent a few days alone. And I remember calling Varun and I was like, I really feel like I want to do the other thing and not this. And I will never forget the silence in his voice. He was like, are you serious?
He was expecting you to come to Bangalore, no?
I think everybody in their right mind was like, okay, this girl is like, this makes sense. But I think everyone was amazing. They were like, okay, go do it. We know you. If you don't do this, you will. So yeah, in a week or something, I was in Manila.
And
And
you've been like this, no? That you'll always choose something which is a little difficult and want to figure it out. That how can this work?
yeah. So I think, but that's the answer, right? Everybody in my life's also been supportive of it. Like, I don't know another person in Varun's
Did
position.
Varun not lose his mind after hearing your option?
I think that's what I said. There was silence.
Yeah.
But I think there was acceptance very quickly, right? Like, I think I remember my mom and dad and like my larger family telling my mom and dad, what is wrong with you? Like, can you just control your daughter a little bit? She's going to some far off land where she has no idea what's happening. This sounds completely nonsensical. But I think everybody who knew me kind of, they were like, dude, she has to do it. If she hates it, she'll come back. But yeah, that changed my life too. Right?
So how long did you spend in Philippines?
4.5 years.
4 years?
4.5 years. We turned the business around. We became
Wow.
the biggest. We are the biggest player in the Philippines and Indonesia today. But for me, things changed, right? I had limited money, and the good thing there was I knew nothing, so I had to only ask questions.
Correct.
And I was so careful because culturally they're so different. It was nice. You know,
How different are they from India?
Everything about them is different. Everything. Like, I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated because I feel if I had to stereotype the country, I think they've cracked the code to happiness, which I think India is not. I think their GDP is just as much as us. Of course, population isn't. They have the same problems as us. Maybe they're a little bit more homogeneous as a country because of religion and language. And India is very heterogeneous because of religion and language. But in general, like, I can give you a simple example. The first thing I learned is when you hire somebody, they care about work-life balance. Like, really. You cannot entice them with 15% more salary.
Correct.
They will take 15% lesser salary and say, I will work 2 hours lesser. And this is across the board, and that's not. So these are the things, you know, like, how do you hire a team? How do you motivate a team? How do you run a venture that is distressed and turn them around? So it's a very people game. Yeah. In 2019, 3 months before end of 2019, we actually signed. We got acquired end of 2019.
The investors only found the acquirer?
So the role was very clear in my head. It's a distressed asset. We needed to sell it. There was no growing this for eternity. It was, we need to sell this asset.
To recover our money.
Yeah. It was a very clear turnaround story, build to sell.
Yeah.
And the timeline was, we had only this X amount of money, which basically meant anywhere between 2 to 4 years. And those were the timelines. And we were profitable. We were okay. You know, so we went along. So I think it was very clear that my job was to build, their job was to sell.
Did you ever feel lonely in your time at Philippines?
I mean, I'm sure. I don't know. No, so Varun and I traveled a lot. You know, and that was the interesting thing.
At that time?
Yeah, because we were living in different countries, and the way we made peace with each other was we would meet every month.
In some other country?
Yeah, so we would meet midway.
Okay.
But that's what I'm trying to say, right? We said we will do it, but we will make life interesting.
Okay.
So we met every month. So yeah, you know, I was in a new city. I was trying to figure out work. I was meeting my boyfriend and husband every month in a new country. So life was very exciting.
Oh.
Yeah. And I like being alone. I have no problem being alone. So, and I'm pretty okay at making new friends. So yeah, it was all very exciting for me. Like,
yeah, and that at that young age when you're working, making that money and traveling the world, what else do you want?
Yeah, it was a very interesting high. Like, I don't regret it at all.
Yeah. And then after that, your role was assumed to be over there. And then
actually 2019 we sold, and see, by then the baby was mine, right? It was fully mine. Like,
correct.
It was mine, and I'm not saying I wanted to live in the Philippines forever or anything, but it's a nice little cozy like country, you know, in a way where I had become very integrated with the real estate, whether it's government, whether it's the real estate. I knew everybody, and it became really comfortable and nice. We sold. I think with acquisitions, the way it goes is they always need the management to stay and build, right? So, but as soon as we sold, Varun and I we traveled to South America to celebrate.
Okay.
And the pandemic hit and we got stuck.
In America?
South America, yeah.
Okay.
We were in Argentina, we were in Peru, and the pandemic officially hit.
Yeah.
So we could not come back. Like, the Philippines had locked down. Philippines was one of the first few countries to shut down. So we were just stuck. Varun and I ended up spending 18 months homeless on the road through the pandemic. We didn't have home to go back to. We came to India for a bit, but we had to go back again. Yeah, I mean, we'd sold. But I spent 6 months after that on the road trying to manage a merger through a pandemic where Philippines was one of the first. I remember, and I will never forget this. Philippines shut end of February 2021, I think.
Okay.
2020. Sorry, 2020.
Yeah.
2020. I remember India shut in March.
Correct.
Philippines shut in February.
Okay.
So it was one of the first few countries, and all of us were like, oh, the government is panicking more than it should. So it was one of those situations. Yeah, so in my head, I had a house. I had to go back. I had a team. I had a company. We still had to complete a merger. And I think there was just insane panic because we had done so much to sell and get acquired. And suddenly it looked like we were all confident it would happen because there was pen to paper and the deal had gone through. But like there could be no company left. Everything was shut. Right? So I think for us, I remember being on calls in South America trying to manage time with the Philippines.
Yeah.
And it's like 14 hours. I don't even know how many hours behind.
Oh,
anyway, it was a lot of that. Ended up finding ourselves in Dubai because it was the only place that was open, and we were popping around everywhere. Varun and I spent time in like Malta and Italy, whichever country was allowing us inside, we were going.
Okay.
It was fun again, but by the end I was done. I was just like, I just need to be at home and just stay. So again, a really good story to tell in hindsight. When we were living it, it was not that much fun. But yeah, I found myself in Dubai, and that's where I met Joel, my co-founder for 10 Club. And my thesis with India was very simple. I think maybe because of StyleBank, I was very clear I will not do fashion again. I was very clear I will not do fashion. I was like, it's a great industry. I can't do it again. There's too much baggage. I think beauty for me, it was not making sense to me. Plus, I think there were too many players, and I was just like, I don't know if I want to. But I think because of real estate, because of just personal, like always been very attracted to spaces and home. And like I said, I'm a very visual person. So I think my brain just kept going into this category, and it kind of kept nagging me why no one was able to crack it. Like, no one's been able to, like, there are many people who've tried and many people who failed, like, extremely badly, right? It's a very difficult business to build.
What is the foundation of roll-up e-commerce business?
So that's the thing I didn't say. Even for us, right? I'm trying to explain the category. I think for me it was not as much about roll up or not roll up, right? For me it was about which category you wanted to build in. See, roll up was a very loosely used term where everybody was buying everything. They would be buying fashion and beauty and home and everything, right? But I think for us, like I said, we picked a niche and we said there is home and it's fully broken. And everyone that's trying to build something is trying to build something in the furniture sector. Which personally for me, I think is super exciting. But there's more to a house than furniture. There's so much more that goes into your house. And no one was really cracking that. So for me, that is what caught my interest. And I said, why is no one cracking this? Because it's just so big. And it's so unorganized. And there is no brand here. And it's such a huge opportunity. It's like $30 billion today. Right? So I think that's what got stuck in my head. And as we spoke to people, we realized that this category is not a branded category. It's a distribution play. You need to be where the customer is. The customer's not going to remember which brand. But if it's there and you're a good quality piece, they will start buying you. And over time, maybe they will remember you. But you can't play the regular fashion. This is my style. This is my product. Come to me game, right? It is not as simple as that. So I think it's a little bit more complex as a category, and everyone who's tried building it over the last decade, and I'm very clear that I say this again and again, right? That India is like every other consumer market that has stages. As spending power increases, you first spend on yourself.
Yeah.
You then, like, first clothing, then beauty, electronics, travel, all of that, and then comes your home.
Right.
Home's a second tier spending piece, right? Like, you'll see a lot of people spending serious amount of money on clothing and beauty, but their spaces will still look like crap.
Yeah.
So it's a journey, right? And post-COVID, I think suddenly the interest in spaces has become
Correct.
a little bit more. And as our spending power increases, it is going to start getting better and better. And I think that's the opportunity I bet on, saying this is what we want to build. Now, how do we build it? Everybody out there who tried building 0 to 1 failed because it's a working capital game. It's huge, right? It's not like you can have 4 pieces or 20 products. You need to have hundreds of products.
Correct.
You can't have 20 products in this category. You have to have hundreds. So it's a little like fashion where you need to have choice. But unlike fashion, it's also very difficult with logistics because it's heavy and bulky.
Yeah.
Like clothes can get folded and
correct.
and they will not get damaged on the way. But this is, as a category, sending it and coming back will damage the product.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more complex as a category. And by now, if you've not seen the pattern, I will not pick easy. I was like, ooh, why has everybody died in this category? Can I figure this out? So I think that was the thesis. And that is what I had told Joel. I said, listen, this is exciting. Something here is exciting to build. So rather than going and buying brands that everybody was buying, can we go buy distribution?
Okay.
And buy distribution in this category. And that's what we did. And I think that was my wild idea. Even back in 2021, if you ever heard anything I said, when everybody used to call us House of Brands, I used to keep going back and saying, guys, we didn't buy brands. We bought these businesses out 100%. They were businesses. And that is why we paid only 1x multiple for them. We never paid brand multiples for it because these are not brands. These are labels. We only bought them for their distribution.
Okay.
Right? So we bought all of it. On day one, we had 8,000 SKUs. And the answer, I will not complicate it, but there was a lot of noise, right? What I did not know is whether we will buy 4 businesses, 8 businesses, 20 businesses, or 100 businesses. We didn't know. I think as soon as we got into the market and we started building it, we were very clear we would buy these businesses out 100%, and which we did. And the reason for that was very simple. I had just walked out of a company that I had sold because I was like, I can't do it.
Correct.
And I was like, listen, if you're going to pay money to an entrepreneur and say, stay and build, I can't take the risk of that person walking out. So I was like, I will pay this, buy the whole thing. And we knew we had to break it. And you can't ever break a founder's company in front of their eyes. Like, they will not let you do it. Right? So for us, the answer was very simple. We needed to buy it 100% because we knew we needed to break it. Keep what's good, let go of what's bad. I think what I did not know back then was whether we would build one brand or multiple brands.
Okay.
Which is, we didn't know whether... So we were building an operating system where we said it's almost like a conveyor belt where you put everything on one. You have to make central operations of everything. You need to learn for scale. You need to make systems, processes, do all the boring work. And the boring work was very important because that is what killed this category always. It was not brand.
Correct.
Right? And I still believe that customers don't deeply care about the brand yet. It's too new a category. But it's distribution, which is if you're a brand and you can give them the right price and they've bought from you once, they'll buy again. But at the stage that we are, they may not still go looking for you. If you happen to be where they are, they will buy you. And that's the difference about this category. I think as we did this, and I say I don't know whether we were going to build one brand or multiple brand, is the question we had is, does one brand need to be made for kitchen? One brand needed to be made for decor? One brand for gardening? We were thinking that way. We thought we needed to make different brands out of this. But I think as we kind of built it out and as we learned, we realized the power of one brand is much, much stronger. And that's why this year we kind of took everything that we liked. 8,000 SKUs went down to 200. We kind of reduced it. Yeah.
Oh.
We kept revenue, and we kept... The goal was to make whatever was winning deeper, and whatever was just noise, cut it. So that was the hardest thing for us to learn to do, but that is what we had to do. It simplified operations, it simplified everything. And everything that was winning, we kind of bet on it and we let it grow. And we learned how to introduce new products. So we built that engine. Now the last question for us was brand, whether one brand or multiple brands.
Correct.
And I think it became very clear for us that building one brand in India is very difficult. And it's like a long, long journey, and it's going to take a lot of money. So we just decided to put everything under 10 Club Homes.
Okay.
And yeah, we're now one single brand, 10clubhomes.com. And yeah, that's where we are.
You had like India's first and largest seed round funding, right? Back in 2021?
See, the answer is, I think we announced funding. 1 month later, 3 people came at 5 times the size of it. They were just not Series Seed or something. They were Series A already.
Okay.
So I think it was just a crazy year where there was just so much funding noise. But yeah, we were a blend of... I think the part, again, I said this in 2021 also. We were the largest, but we had a lot of debt. We were not equity. Like, I think, it was written there in the press release that it was a blend of debt and equity, and serious debt, not, we had international debt.
Okay.
So our structure was a little different. It was, I think a lot of people who joined us also, they were like $40 million. And I'm like, wait, guys, it's not 40 million in equity. There's a lot of debt here. You cannot waste this money.
Yeah. And how... It's a long-term loan, right?
Yeah. It's like venture debt. It's long.
Yeah.
And it's venture debt that came in even before the company was formed, right? So it's not linked to anything. It's as good as equity, but it's debt.
Okay. That's interesting. But how did you have, did you always have investor support through these pivotal times? And
see, I don't think I could have done this alone, right? There's a reason why I convinced Joel to be my co-founder. I had to do the pitching because Joel did not know India, but there was no way I could have put this. Somebody else could have, but I could not, because this is not what I knew. But I think him and I working together could put this together.
Can you tell me about one of your most interesting pitching sessions that you had?
I say this very openly. I think people think that I whipped out 40 million from nowhere. We did 260 pitches.
Really?
Yeah.
In what time duration?
1 year.
Oh.
1 year. I did 260 pitches, and Fireside was one of my last Indian investors where I'd almost given up hope but they got it. They were consumer business investors, and they were just like, okay, they like, forget all this roll up and all. They didn't care, right? They cared about the home category. They cared about what I was saying about distribution, and they just got it. And for me, I didn't go to them because I was like, man, I'm not buying brands, and they are never going to believe what I'm trying to do. But my mistake and my learning there was they got it like instantly. And I don't think I could have done any of this without them, because I was running blind a fair amount. But I think because they know so much about the market, we kind of work together, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, 260 pitches. So,
and then tell me, when some days when the business is not doing that well as you aspire it to be, how do you navigate those conversations and take it on a path where you see some good light ahead?
With who? There is the team, there is yourself, there is the board.
Everyone, actually. One man.
I think this is what I mean by, most of the time what I tell my board, my team knows, my management knows, and I know. It's the same story across the board, right? Which is, I don't think boards freak out when they've done this more than you. They're seeing 100 companies at one time.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's an idiot. Nobody thinks everything is always rosy. Right? So I think that's the answer. Like, maybe the first time they'll freak out, but if they know that you're a founder who can say, okay, I'll figure it out. Once I know what to do, I'll figure it out. And I will execute. I think it's that, right? I think even with teams, like, we've not had a rosy journey, right? It's been hard because the ecosystem's broken. The market's changed. There's Online sales fell after COVID. There were so many things that happened. But I think the rule with our team is mostly everybody knows most things. Everybody has access to most information because we're like, man, if you're going to freak out about this, then you please leave.
Yeah.
Don't be here and freak out. You stay. So I think that's the style, right?
So do you think the investors who backed you, they backed you basis the category that you were in, where they saw the potential? Or what was it that...
Yeah, so I think the answer was a couple of things that I said made sense, right? And it's playing out now. It was not playing out in 2021, which was home, this is what's broken. You cannot build it ground up. You need to kind of put it together. You need to fix distribution and operation. You don't fix brand first. No one's paying extra for brand right now. You don't waste money on CAC because no one, like, you're not going to... So I think some of these fundamentals that it's not something I said, it's what I learned after talking to so many people, and it sounded like that is what killed everybody.
Yeah.
I think the ground fundamentals were there. I think that was... And I think yes, there's a little bit of history of if you've run a distressed company, have taken it out, chances are you have some kind of operating kind of leverage. And I think slowly with that, I still do long-term pitches and I still do all of that. But yeah, I think everybody's accepted that I can't do I would have become a consultant. I can't do it.
Yeah.
But we'll get it done. Which the answer is, I'm not a bad storyteller. I can tell a story. So, I think there are a couple of things that... So, I think it became very clear that I can build a team. Like, I do attract decent team members. I have always been able to hire above power. People have stayed through, really distressed times. So, I think these are all the things that investors look at, right? They just don't look at a pitch deck that is 5 years.
Yeah, that's true. I know there is no departments as such in startups, but what kind of teams do you have operationally in your
we have
business?
So however unstructured I seem, because I am so unstructured in my thoughts, systems and processes are very clean. We have proper project management tools that run across the company. So we have functions. We have, of course, now it's completely an operating company, right? So there are revenue teams, where there are marketplace teams, there are direct-to-consumer teams now, and now there is a retail team. So there are 3 lines of revenue.
Okay.
There are revenue teams. There is one central operating team, which is the supply chain team. So from procurement to warehousing to vendor relationships, all of them. That's the central team. Then there is the entire planning team, which is the bridge between the operations team and the P&L team, which is pricing, planning, all of that. Then there's, of course, a supply team, and then there's a brand team. Those are the broad buckets. And, of course, there is the data and strategy team that works on everything else.
Okay, that's very interesting. Got it. And because our show is titled as Wiping Out the Norm, one instance where you think you wiped out the norm.
My favorite word, and I think I coined this, I want to say I coined it, I don't know if somebody else coined it, is the guilt monster. I think women have this inbuilt guilt monster. All of us have it. We so easily feel guilty about things, and I don't know, it's so easy for the world to make you feel guilty, or you for yourself to feel guilty. I think I've broken it. I still feel it, but I feel it, when I feel it arise, I very quickly recognize it, and I'm like, I refuse to feel guilty about this.
How did you build that?
I think just acknowledging it. So I that's what I'm saying. I don't know. It's something that's happened. And for me, if I have to say about wiping out norms, and I've started noticing this a little bit more every time I meet women, older, younger, my age. I think the minute I speak about this openly, I think they realize and they resonate, because for some reason, women are freaking always feeling guilty. They're feeling guilty about being ambitious. They're feeling guilty about not being at home. They're feeling guilty about something else. We're constantly guilty.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, I think it's that. I think it's this, I'm on this journey of controlling my guilt monster. And I'm like, it's my life. I cannot feel guilty about anything unless I need to feel guilty about it. And I think the second one is, it's new. And I don't think I've broken the norm yet, but it's a new one for me, which is a kind of offshoot of the guilt monster, is I think I posted about this recently because I was so fascinated by
Yeah.
it, is I have not seen women chill. Like, women just can't chill. Right? Where, like, I'm not talking about work, but in general, we're always freaking on. You know, and we just can't give ourselves a break. So I think I just put this out, and I'm just like on this thing saying I'm going to control my guilt monster and I'm going to chill. Which is, if I want to chill, I will be 100% okay with chilling.
Correct.
So yeah, I want to see more chilled women, and just be okay with doing nothing if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, that's a very interesting answer, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of people have answered this in a professional context, but I'm very glad to know this from a personal context, you know.
What have I answered in a professional context in the last 2 hours that I have spoken to you?
Yeah, I think it was already answered before.
I was like, my full life is intertwined in everything. Like, I was like, this is all there is. Personal, professional.
Yeah. Everything is come.
Yeah, everything's come.
No, but thanks a lot, Bhavna, for speaking so openly, honestly, and transparently with me. I really loved speaking to you, and I'm sure when our people watch the show, they're going to love the way you've answered all our questions today. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.